Hi, I'm Daniel, and I've been off making YouTube videos a couple months now, and I still don't expect to make them regularly where your videos are short at the start. But I already rewatched the movie on Remake for this, I don't want to waste that time, so here goes. This has actually been a video I've been wanting to make for a while. I just didn't because I never saw the Peter Dragons movies for you, until now. I have a lot of mixed feelings on Disney remakes. While I don't like most of them, I also kind of feel defensive of them when I hear the same copy-pasted statement grouping them all together. Partly because I think these started off well, while having changed tones and stories. That did some interesting things in a new adaptation. It felt like they were specifically picking which movies someone wanted to do, but eventually it became just trying to have a remake for every film possible. These just started to feel all mass produced and aimed for nostalgia more clearly. Visually, a yacht just tried to copy the exact same shot in a sign live action that often looks uncanny. If anything, it kind of feels like the effects are getting worse with the recent films, as if they're barely hiding how forced out these movies are. The thing is, they actually get directors who have made good films to sign on to Disney remakes. I understand the practice of one for me, one for them as a project in between, but I struggle to understand why they get these directors given the target audience probably wouldn't care about from the director of Bianca in the trailer. Is it to create a pattern of wondering, maybe the director of Moonlight will bring something to no? Surely Marcel Shell will be a good fit for Yayo and Stick now. Good directors repeatedly sour these movies to a point that the common denominator has to be the studio, but them being hired in the first place makes me think there's some incentive to make good movies. Even after so many consistent misses in a row, I do think a quality movie is still possible. I do believe remakes from a negative term, as a different version of an existing movie or book they are both based on can be a great thing, and some, mainly the top two, have a lot of impact in taking the strengths and making a new experience out of it. I also feel like if this trend stopped in 2019, that these were looked upon more fondly as a thing of the past, as opposed to it being the main example of Hollywood's lack of originality, which general audiences will continue to consume. Even with me no longer seeing them in cinemas, I might still be past the point with how much I watch them when they're released on Disney Plus. I'll just remain curious when seeing a remake and what changes, if any, they will make. So, with Yayo and Stitcher the most recent, time for me to rank them. First of all, I'm non-queuing the earlier remakes of 101 Dalmatians and Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, because I associate the remakes with the OVCJ and 2010s, so their inclusion alongside them will stand out. I've also not seen them. I was close to counting Mary Poppins Returns and Chippendale Rescue Rangers as part of the same studios, but I decided they don't have enough characteristics to qualify as remakes. However, sequels to remakes are fair to count, reaching a total of 21. I've seen most of these movies twice, some more, which is a waste of time now at least using for something. I have talked for enough, so what are the worst and best Disney remakes in my opinion? 21. Pinocchio. This is the yoke of the remakes, where it's hard to find the unironic positive for. It takes one of the best classic Disney films and takes away any of its qualities. It is yes atmospheric, the comedy falls flat, it messes up the original characters and adds new ones that do little. Mainly, it just messes up the story so bad with Pinocchio lacking his agency in his bad decisions, which makes the character growth barely shown. The choice to have him go to Pleasure Island immediately after Stromboli makes the pace off and nothing feels dark or intimidating. The coachman is just evil shadows, and yes, a grand incitement of human cruelty and greed. The idea of a bad guy succeeding but he should still do good is tampered with. The writing and actors feels overly corny, the visuals look off, and this whole movie is just a mess. I guess Honest John was fine, and it's not the worst Pinocchio movie released around that time. Don't watch Pinocchio True Story, it's not even ironically funny. On that note, I guess this can make a good ironic watch, especially in one moment I want to talk about. The choice to have Stromboli get arrested is dumb, but the scene where it's stated and then had a 2-second cut away to him being thrown in bars and screaming no is maybe one of the funniest things ever. I need to know how that scene came together. Did they always intend to have this be a family cutaway, or did they cut down a larger scene? Why is he screaming no when he must have already been taken somewhere? Terrible movie, but that Stromboli scene gives me more joy than most of this list. 20. Mulan. I normally don't change my opinions much, but how did I give this 5 out of 10 back in 2020? It's so bad. I consider for a moment ranking at the bottom, but the cinematography is pretty good with some great shots. It visually doesn't just try to copy the original and they try to do something. The Phoenix following her is occasionally cool, even if it replaces Mushu. Anyway, this movie misunderstands the original so much, with Mulan having Chi and the positioning of her masculine trait being superior, as opposed to her finding her own strength feeling out of place in both worlds. The notion of all yang being immoral is also a very dumb thing this pushes. Even aside from all the mishandled themes, this is just a really boring war movie in the middle, without any tension or ability to take it seriously. The dialogue is so poorly written across every interaction, and the editing is so quick and not natural in the cutting between shots. It makes every action scene look yaffy bad. I think a Mulan remake with more style and a genre homage could have been so cool, but this just seems empty. This is just Mulan without the fun and without the strong arc. These bottom two are really bad. I love the others aren't good movies or are pretty bad. They aren't on the level of these two out of tens. 19. Peter Pan and Wendy. While yes, memory bad, this feels like the quintessential example of how dull these remakes can be. I'm not the biggest Peter Pan fan, but that original had a lot of fun and wonder in Neverland that just felt so original and full of all sorts going on. Here it's just a random island/field location with some yacht boys and a pirate ship. This movie hates colour so much, the costumes and lighting are just made so dull and bland. I get the impression it's trying to be like a 2000s fantasy film, but it has no magic and the overly serious approach doesn't work. The backstory given to Captain Hook just makes Peter Pan unlikable, and the Wendy focus doesn't do enough to justify the title change. This movie is just so boring a story where you're wandering about, and terrible world building that just feels so empty. It looks even worse when David Yao directed The Green Knight 2 years before this, which is one of the most atmospheric and visually stunning fantasy films I've seen. I guess Mr. Smee and Tiger you were okay here. This is such a nothing remake that released on Disney Plus that no one seemed to care. It's this and one more I'll get to that I'll probably get some people watching this video asking, wait, this already happened? 18. Mufasa the Lion King. In 2021, I made a video about why Lion King remake could be good, and it has some potential, but I was really off the mark. This was worse than I thought. I disagree with the consensus of being better than the first remake. Although the lions are more expressive, this lacks the actual stunning side of certain visuals or atmosphere. There's good lighting, but this visually looks less polished and follows a story that's really bad. This is one of those prequels where I can't buy any of this actually happened and I don't want to. Taka's arc is so above the turn over an already above friendship. How do you make a brothers to enemies plot feel so beyond? This references the paw grab twice and thinks it's so clever about it. Most of all, this is boring spending so much of the middle on this journey. It is filled with characters I normally like being so annoying and unfunny, especially in the framing device, with Timon and Pumbaa's interrupting jokes getting so annoying. Making me hate Timon and Pumbaa is one of the worst sins a movie can commit. The comedy misses almost every joke, and the drama is what people falsely assume Shakespeare is. It's just, ooh, monologues, betrayal, and not exciting and complex in any other way. Maybe this could work better for some people, but I just found the plot so tedious. I guess some of the songs were okay, even with your memorandums with lyrics being weaker than usual. Artistes had a new story, but that new story is so bad it is worse than most of the other remakes. 17. Eyes Through the Yucking Glass. While I won't say too much about this now in the video, I actually like the first Eyes on Wonderland remake, and the dystopian spin of Wonderland has a strong feel going for it. While Tim Burton didn't return, this had the director of the 2010s Muppet films which are amazing, even if very different tonally. Still, this barely feels like the same world, with how bright it is, and its uncanny elements feel less intentionally uncanny. The costumes look nice at least. The main highlight this has are a strong score, and the new character named Time being fun. Time travel can be interesting, this is just a mess with Mad Hatter Yor not being at all interesting. There's also the Queen of Hearts evil backstory that is so dumb you can't even guess what it is. There's one scene of her telling the White Queen, tell them, like anyone known will make a difference. I'm more for Valentine petty backstories, but this is too much, especially with how serious it takes it. The real world Aya story of her wanting to keep us in the company is really boring, and has still impact on the rest of the movie. There's also such a chunk of pointless side characters from the first movie just being here. I remember liking this movie when I first watched it, but no, this was the first bad spot of the remakes. 16. Lady and the Tramp. If you don't know, this released in 2019 as part of Disney Plus' launch, and it essentially got buried on the platform instantly on release. I don't like the original, so this didn't that far in quality, but it's also 30 minutes younger for no reason, for a movie that was already dragged out. This at least has more established villains and a clear pace, but it's also a live action dog movie, which might be my least favourite subgenre. The dogs aren't expressive, with voices not fitting, and it isn't funny. This is just a very nothing movie to only watch once, if even that by how it released. Something strange, the narrative frames itself like Toy Story 4 in part, with certain dialogue about being a yacht dog making me think of an ending change that will better fit, but it doesn't. Anyway, I'm tempted to start defending Toy Story 4's ending instead of actually discussing this movie, so we should probably move on now. 15. Beauty and the Beast. This feels like the first major misstep of the Disney remakes, with I guess for looking at seeing more like a few because it was a sequel as opposed to a direct remake. Even on first watch when I liked it enough, it just felt very lazy and very trying to be its own thing. It's not a complete copy, but the changes don't change the story beats, and this tries to recapture a look at the original where it doesn't really succeed. It still has some atmosphere in the great opening music over the castle logo, and this has some really strong costume production design going for it. It is a mostly good looking movie with some uncanny CG creatures, mainly Miss Potts, but are just hard to get invested in. Beauty and the Beast, more than most of Disney great, is made by the execution more than the story and characters. I get no emotion here from the romance and how it develops. Most of the songs are somewhat butchered by autotune or Your Energy, except for the mob song which remains very underrated. The new song Evermore is overhyped in my opinion, and is just a generally dull watch. The best part are probably Gaston and Yaffu, who are both paid very well to show Gaston's ego and giving Yaffu a decent enough redemption arc. Otherwise, this is a very mediocre remake. 14. The Little Mermaid. It says something that after Miriam, Pinocchio, and Peter Pan and Wendy, my main thought was at least it didn't outright mess up the original. It could work well for those who haven't rewatched Little Mermaid in over 5 years, but this is just the same story with the same scene, just far younger. Why did this need to be over 2 hours? It takes an hour for Ariel to become human, and not much added to that opening. If this wanted to expand past, there should have been more centered on the romance and surface scenes. I remember thinking this improved Eric's character over the original, but not enough of a change for me to remember what he actually did here. I'm a bit mixed on Higher Bayer's Ariel not having quite the same adventurous charm, but their singing is so great to make up for it. You could say it doesn't make sense thematically for her to sing in Under the Sea, but I don't care because the harmony sounds really good. The Scuttlebutt song is obviously not good, but it's one of the only memorable things from this experience. Visually it has some good shots, but the water and CG creatures look very off. This isn't outright bad, just a pretty boring movie I got nothing from. It appears even more here than the other remakes I say that about. 13. Yayo and Stitch. The most recent remake is strange in mostly playing it safe and just repeating the Yarv scenes in worse ways, but near the end there's two changes that cause the Yarv hate for this movie. I don't think these changes were that conceptually bad, but are still awkwardly executed in a movie not fully adapting to fit these changes. The effects don't look good, especially on Peaky's design. This is one of the harder films to adapt into live action, but looking at it, it's not surprising it was meant to be a Disney Plus original, before being sent to cinemas and grossing over $1 billion anyway. Stitch being so much more than Yo instead the same size, just looks so much worse. This movie is constantly shot in a very bland way, and with watered down version of these characters. David especially lost so much charm here. The overall heart isn't as strong, and Yo feels sadder here with how much Nanny feels like the sole protagonist. The scene Can Stitch Say Goodbye still makes me emotional even yes a form at least. This adaptation could have done more with Jumbo as a obsessive artist and Nanny's own independence, but they aren't done well enough for it to not feel like a weakened Ohana. This movie isn't that funny, and it's just watching scenes pass feeling little. Next. 12. The Lion King. Not to spoil the rest of the ranking too much, but there's a big difference between both the remakes Jon Favreau directed. This really disappointed me in how much of the same movie and yet a form it is. Recently House of the Dragon was more the same, but that was at least done well enough for most audiences not to care. It's DreamWorks, but if it wasn't this year still ranked 7th. Although, this comes with some automatic points just for adapting the studio's best film. The same story structure and most of the same scenes still creates some great moments. The score is still amazing, and there's elements of a good arc here, even if slightly lacking, and for some reason it's 30 minutes younger. The character variations are made so much weaker here, mainly in Timon and Pumbaa's parenting of Simba feeling rushed, and them lacking the same charming likability. I guess the BR guest joke is good, But it's a bit of a suspicious coincidence that this, Murian, and the Iron Stitch remake all cut out drag. Be prepared as ominous chant could have gone so hard, but it just ends before starting. Anytime this almost does something no interesting, it just stops before it does anything. This mainly just gets points for having actually great visuals. The faces and white characters behind the background look awkward, but otherwise the detail and impact is prevalent in so many shots. This bit following with Melps wandering across these backgrounds is a highlight in this mediocre movie. Snow White. I'm only halfway through and only got past the films I call about to see this, as the best remake in years, but only 5 out of 10. This has the lowest average on Letterboxd at 1.8, and while it may be slightly tanked, it still seems to generally hate this, but I thought it has some unironic good qualities. Mainly just Wait on a Wish, being such a strong I Want song that I've been listening to a lot. Some of the other original songs are good, like Princess Problems, and I like how this adapts new rendition of the old songs. But on that note, the song sequences feel dragged out with constant interruptions. This whole movie lasts too long and feels totally confused in its attempt to be some serious cultural drama, while having to stay somewhat reminiscent of the original. The dwarfs feel very tonal out of place, even when framed more as side characters. The evil queen's bits of comedy, especially a song, really don't work. There's a strong theme here about the power of kindness and unity taking down the corruption at the top, but these films are a bit underdeveloped. I like giving Snow White a bit more character, but when you get down to it, most of her personality traits remain just being kind, with Rachel Segler's acting carrying her. On that note, is it just make you think she will win better Ariel, and Halle Berry will win better for Snow White, even down to the singing better fitting the songs of different films. I appreciate this movie's attempt to do something different, but it can't go far enough those changes at the end. Also, this movie looks a bit poor visually, with the costumes looking like a Halloween costume and not natural in the live action setting. Kind of a mess, but not a complete mess, and in my opinion, I find that evens out to the original, which I'm not a fan of. 10. Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. This is a yard step above both the other remake sequels, but that's not saying much. I would think an original story would work better, but not so much in these cases. The thing with this film is it serves its role as a sequel really well. It expands the world, the various both main characters through a separation, and expands on the human versus magic conflict. Granted, that turns it into an overly serious drama, with just so much of a battle set piece near the end. It somewhat blames all the discrimination and Maleficent's reputation on just one person. This movie could use more wonder with the magic element, even with the improved visuals to show that off. It's weird how barely and not comedic at all this is. This awkward dinner scene should have just done what Shrek 2 did instead. But don't worry, because the fairies are here and still very annoying. I guess it's a bit amusing how it's ignored them raising Aurora and what happens to one of them. But why do any of the characters in these movies keep them around? I guess I like Prince Philip finding out a personality and reason to care about him. It's like a Cinderella 3 moment, but not as good. I also like your Maleficent's progression with looking more evil at times and the bond with Aurora. There's good elements here, but it's such a mess of a story that feels convoluted while also having few plot beats actually happen at the same time. I'll personally just stick with the first Maleficent. 9. Pete's Dragon. The reason I couldn't make this video earlier is because I couldn't get through the original Pete Dragon, and in turn never watched this. I really hated the original being annoying and far too long. It is worse than all but the bottom 3 of this list. I did here's one of the better remakes, and it's certainly on the upper half and an improvement. But I still won't call it good. I like how much would change, and the vision going into remaking a yes popular classic that needed some fixing. It feels just a bit yes commercial in that way. It also gets points for keeping some wonder around the edges of this dragon, and features some atmospheric flying scenes, but it also comes out very corny and generic. This orphan boy getting closer to a family is quite bland. The thing I'll give the original over this is making the parental relationship feel a lot stronger and even wholesome in rare moments. The characters are fine. I like how it's avoided making one character a villain. Not much happens, but it's better than lasting too long. There's a great idea here regarding Pete hiding away from a traumatic event, and yearning to open up again. This one scene about him wanting to disappear, but being told he's cared about is wrong, even if the theme isn't fully expanded upon. I'm not sure if I like or dislike the dragon design here. It looks less friendly, but I like the green. This visually can be a bit dull at times, especially in the lighting. I can get why many wouldn't like this, and prefer the camp of the original Peach Dragon, over this that probably would have bored you off kids. Personally, I found this okay enough, which did wonders in being so much better than the original in my opinion. 8, I add in. This is one of the better remakes that serves its job well as entertaining time, but is ultimately just a yes version of the original that's younger and yes fun. There's enough liberties and differences, but not enough to feel distinct or have a strong reason to watch this instead. The sets and costumes as well are really good and shiny. I appreciate how it's just created a similar vibe instead of just fully recreating them, even if the cinematography sometimes does that. The musical numbers aren't staged that well, and the effects sometimes look off. The Jafar gene at the end looks really cursed. The songs can be hit or miss. I really don't like this friend like me, as I discussed in this video, but the Arabian Nights cover is great. I like the new song's features, but it's very ironic that it's happening internally. Jasmine getting more agency is good on paper, but feels preached anytime it's mentioned. The romance between her and the Yadin may actually be slightly better here. There's also a side romance between the genie and Jasmine's handmaiden that I sure find forced, but it's really very likable and one of the best parts of this movie. While a role impossible to live up to, Will Smith did a pretty good job here being a yes extravagant genie. I buy his friendship with Yadin here and how they help each other. This does suffer from tone down the wackiness of the original, like making Iago just a parrot, and some of the politics around the imagined countries being boring. Jafar here is this movie's main missed potential. How did they give such a cool backstory as a former thief who stole his way to the top, and do nothing with that? I never was much of a Jafar fan, but this promise makes him even more yacking. Also, at one point he had unlimited power, and all he did to the guards was transport them to a dungeon. Fine enough remake, but not quite good. 7. Cinderella. It seems most people when asked about the best Disney remake will either say The Jungle Book or Cinderella. As you can tell by its being number 7, I don't quite think it's out there, but it's easily one of the best ones that actually just feels like a good version of the story. I don't like the original film, just find the characters bland and too much time is spent on the mice. This feels like a more centered story where a romance actually has conversations that is kind of nice. Even so, these plot beats still come off very generic and hard to believe, especially with this tone. I couldn't fully take the serious moments seriously, and the art of the characters, especially the stepsisters, get annoying. The dialogue and characters don't do enough for me. I see the appeal of her, but Yates Remain didn't work for me here, with the theatrics and attempt to give her depth not work on me. Still, what this has does a lot in making the magic prevalent, mainly across certain scenes. The carriage transformation, the yuck of the ball, and that shot the shoes going is just so enchanting. The music and visuals here range from serviceable to really popping off the screen when it needs to. I appreciate what this did, but find the source material maybe putting it down. I see why it's a childhood classic for so many, but I just find it okay. 6. Dumbo. I don't know if I can call it a good movie, but it's cool, so a movie I liked enough both times I watched it. I just like the practice of adding an entire second half to the story and reshaping the movie to something enough similar but also different. This movie can be extremely corny and saccharine, with this shrugging circus and these kids. This family struggle takes up too much time and just feels very forced and emotionally. The sequences of events and plot turns are poorly written, but ultimately I don't mind. I like the bond of the circus group, especially Danny DeVito playing the ringleader in a way that's funny but also kind of heartfelt at times. Dumbo doesn't speak, but I like what's done with him and his search for his mother, even if Timothy is highly missed. I also like how this contrasts the simplistic circus to his high status amusement park. While it's not the best at this, it's a decent counter to corporate Disney stripping from entertainers. The villain is one dimensional and this just feels beyond. While Tim Burton may have been the most unscathed director of the remakes, this movie lacks so much of his style. I didn't need this to be dark, I just wanted it to be unique. Dumbo is nothing special, but I think it gets too much hate. It's likeable enough and the best of the 2019 remakes. Why was there so many in one year? 5. Korea. I'm glad I gave this a rewatch before making this yet, but it's genuinely pretty good and entertaining film that I was just a bit confused and best yet standalone. To start with why I think this concept doesn't work, as not being sure how to frame it as adaptation. Wicked and Maleficent are pretty famous alternate universes, with a story around the falsely able villain. This is sort of that, but also tries to be framed as backstory, with an ending to I never understood. But also has this character be fundamentally different. This narrative is also very confused on if this wants Freya to go on a degradation arc through his persona, with how suddenly she started mistreating Jasper and Horace, which feels very out of place when it happens. Or it wants Korea to act as a similar empowerment to his framed as a villain, which I think this was leaning towards. This feels strange having an activist angle without anything to protest for. This could have made better use of a group of the outcasts from society taking down the evil high class woman, but it feels like it's missing that political theme. This may sound negative so far, but I like this movie, okay? The first act takes a bit of time, but it quickly becomes so fun and compelling watching these games turn back and forth between these two women with power. You really feel the hype from Korea in her showing up to the event and lighting up her cloak. Also, the whole final scheme is just so satisfying. I really like this high autistical version of the character, playing around with the point of it being two different people. This one twist is really effective, and leads to the best scene in this movie regarding her self-reflection and assertion of her identity. This arc around regaining confidence and a different attitude in Estella is shown really well. The Duchess is also such a great example of pure evil villain, with later reveals meant to make it even more viral. I like how the story goes from dark places, and the style it's told in. Korea is just a really solid and strong movie. That is best if you ignore how it messed up the adaptational Wayne story. For Maleficent, I will never understand why a concept of having a different perspective with the Raiders and the Villain is so hard for many people to get past. This movie does admit you get weaker as you grow up, with some cursed CG, and there are moments and characters that just feel awkward. The fairies are especially annoying, and I don't tend to like most of the side characters in this movie. This also has to deal with Sleeping Beauty being one of the best classic films, harder to live up to than some of the other good remakes. While the movie as a whole may not be great, I just find the dark home and the dramatic weight of the story are gotten across so well. The cut off wings are a very strong analogy, and this really does a great job of explaining how she got to that Venus persona. The story of this curse meant to spread hate only for her to be attached to a child and wish to undo the curse is just so brilliant. This arc is really strong, and I appreciate how it's less than 100 minutes compared to how dragged out all these remakes are. This doesn't waste time, and really gets to sell the bond of Maleficent and Aurora. However, this has a very missed potential regarding turning the king into a villain. This progresses him to turn more aggressive well, but it feels like a movie about someone seen as a villain should have a more tragic and layered one. Him turning into a villain instead of the king he wanted to be due to his guilt and regrets could have made a very strong foil to Maleficent's regained self. The setup was all here, but it keeps him mostly the bland villain. I ultimately really like most of what this did, and it's a good movie. 3. Alice in Wonderland. I can see what's turns people off, but I just get really into this darker version of Wonderland. The place always has something creepy about it, and expanding on that atmosphere in this way is a good idea that feels like its own thing more than any other Disney remake, probably because it's the first one. This direction fits the dystopian story, seeing this cursed world on the verge of war. The uncanny CG and visuals may not look good, but it fits the tone. And it also feels like how I imagine Wonderland in live action, just darker. I don't normally like Yes Korea, but the colour scheme really works alongside the cinematography. At the same time, the movie prioritizes that over actual story and characters. The human leading is very dumb with Iris not having much of a character, and this attempt to make Mad Hatter a second antagonist but its tragic backstory fails. Also, the dialogue gets very repetitive, with Iris repeating it's a dream, the discussion on if she's the real Iris, and this boring prophecy. This did need to be an action film, and it's best when just embracing the dark and weird tone. The Cheshire Cat is really strong here, and that fake out execution is such a great scene. The Red Queen is generic, but her threat to the in-school dictator is built up very well. I like watching these different creatures team up against this ruler, and the general sense of dread found across this movie. This is harder to objectively defend than the rest of the top 5, but compared to so many adult-fine childhood movies, this feels like it gives up how cursed a feel nostalgia can be, which I get more out of. 2. Christopher Robin. Speaking of adult-fine childhood movies, we have the opposite end of the spectrum with this very emotional and heartfelt reflection of childhood. Disney's Winnie the Pooh movies are great, especially Pig is Big Movie. Seriously, that film is amazing and no one talks about it. They are very charming, funny, and genuinely well written to show this world of the Hundred Acre Wood. Deciding to show Chris Robin older just have more reason to exist and a story to tell. This doesn't feel as much like a Disney remake, with it feeling closer to being made for art. Even the CG stuffed animals fit in. I could have had them be more rough and from the past, as opposed to being right and marketable. This movie is very emotionally potent the whole way through, with Christopher's life being told through this great montage, and seeing him now stressed, separate from his childhood, and about to make a similar mistake his parents did to his own daughter. This should feel more corny than it does, but it just comes off so genuine. I really like this reunion with Pooh. That was very funny seeing his innocent and own logic pay off the more serious Christopher Robin. I like how it doesn't explain Pooh's teleport in that tree, as just where it needs to be, and how it's represented childhood and appreciation for life. The moment where Christopher re-experiences joy and realizes what's important is so effective. Aside from maybe Eeyore, most of the other cast of characters don't do much, but they are still fun to see again. While having a connection to these characters gives more out of it, it's still a good movie on its own. This really holds up as one of the two masterpieces that come from Disney remakes, but it still had no shot being number one on this list. 1. The Jungle Book. If there's ever been a movie where it feels like I've been watching a different movie to some people, it might be this one. It's generally regarded one of the better remakes, but only 3.2 on the Letterboxd. It's fine if people don't like this, but I will never see that, as this is just a deeply atmospheric film which has funny comedy and a very powerful narrative arc. I find the original movie decent, but it is partly ruined for me with how much this improves upon it, especially in giving Mowgli agency. This arc around who he is and his skills that one appreciate giving him strength is so powerful. There's one confrontation and speech in the climax that goes so insanely hard. Shere Khan might be my favourite movie villain, which feels weird to say since he's not doing that much unique, but he is just so threatening and interesting. Idris Elba's voice acting is so commanding, and certain monologues still give me chills after watching this movie over 10 times. I also love Ryu here, making him act more selfish and sarcastic is funny, and really makes the bond with Mowgli feel more heartfelt and genuine. Bagheera Ray has a strong presence to him, and the other side characters make such impact in a short amount of time. This is leagues above the other remakes and other films in general in creating a world. This makes the jungle into a culture, with details like the water truths and elephants being looked up towards, adding a lot of richness to this world. There's a lot of danger, but also community in this piece. I also find the ending change so superior in what it means in this adaptation's themes. The visuals are great at making animals realistic but still expressive, the cinematography is constantly beautiful, and the score is great at adding to the world. I don't have time to discuss everything I have to say here, but just know it's my second favourite film of all time. Even if all of the 20 films in this ranking were terrible, I would still find it worth it for this, which I easily consider the best Disney remake. In conclusion, this script was put on hold for some months, but I'm glad to finally finish it and release it. I don't plan to make many videos in 2026, but there's at least one I want to make shortly. I like getting to discuss these movies with all the bad, but also finding a couple good things in every one, and all these aren't one collective. I don't expect Moana or any upcoming remake to be good, but I'll probably still keep watching them. This video is one of my youngest, so at least I came back with a big one. I normally do a big conclusion, but I think I said enough in the opening. So I hope you enjoyed this video and hearing my thoughts on each film. The end.